Hola, hola, muy buenos días a todos, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Francisco Rodríguez, soy el jefe de la División de Gobierno Digital de la Secretaría General de la Presidencia y tengo el privilegio, el honor de estar acá hoy día en este salón espectacular, al que primero tengo que dar las gracias a Kael Becerra, el Secretario General de Contraloría, por acogernos aquí. No es tan fácil encontrar un salón para hablar de tecnología con estas pantallas maravillosas y con estas instalaciones, así que muchas gracias, Kael. Esperamos que esta sea la primera de muchas y por supuesto que vamos a retribuirle. Quiero dejar con ustedes hoy día el ministro de las Express, Felipe Ward, no pudo estar acá, pero sí nos acompaña el flamante subsecretario de Express, pero un experimentado servidor público, ex subsecretario de Justicia, ex director de CERNAC y entre otras credenciales. Los dejo con Juan José Osa.
Buenos días, amigas y amigos. Yo voy a hablar muy breve, no solo porque tengo que ir a otra reunión, sino porque probablemente soy de toda esta sala el que menos sabe de lo que vamos a hablar. Y he pedido, ¿no es cierto?, tener acceso a la grabación que va a haber, porque sin duda es un desafío para un subsecretario de las Express aprender e ir interiorizándose en estos temas. Tenemos el orgullo, el placer de tener al director de e-residency de Estonia, Ott Vatter, ¿está bien dicho? Sí. Que nos va a seguir encaminando, seguir iluminando en un tema que el presidente Piñera nos ha encargado con tanta fuerza, que es la modernización del Estado. Incluso en estos tiempos en que la agenda ha girado, el presidente nos ha insistido en que no podemos aflojarle algo tan importante. Si estamos aquí en la Secretaría General de la Presidencia, ¿no es cierto?, encabezando, guiando esta actividad, es porque justamente nuestro ministerio ha sido convocado, ha sido llamado para efectos de hacerse cargo de muchos aspectos relacionados a la modernización del Estado. Yo me atrevería a decir que hoy hay dos instrumentos principalmente que nos impulsan a lo anterior. Uno es el instructivo presidencial, que muchos de ustedes conocen mejor que yo, y el segundo, la ley de transformación digital, que ya estando promulgada, así todo nos impone tremendos desafíos para efectos de implementarla. No solo algunos aspectos relativos a su gradualidad, sino también a aspectos culturales. Son muchos los servicios, ¿no es cierto?, que nos convocan, que van a ser parte de la interoperabilidad y, en fin, los que tienen que acostumbrarse a este camino, a este salto que se está dando. Se modernizan algunas instituciones y, en definitiva, nos hemos comprometido a cero fila, cero papel. Es un viejo anhelo del presidente Piñera, y sin duda los ciudadanos que todavía no conocen de qué se trata este proyecto, una vez que se implemente, van a estar muy contentos, muy agradecidos. Nos ahorrará tiempo para estar con nuestras familias, para hacer deporte, en fin, para vacacionar, para lo que sea, y además nos permitirá muchos ahorros, que sin duda a quienes conocemos al presidente sabemos que eso es algo que lo motiva especialmente, sobre todo en época de vacas flacas. Así que yo los dejo por razones de servicio. Buen servicio ya, eso es opinable. Así que muchas gracias por su asistencia y espero, ¿no es cierto?, la grabación para seguir aprendiendo. Muchas gracias.
¿Se escucha? Sí. Bueno, muchas gracias, subsecretario Osa. Entonces, ahora I'm going to switch to English because our guest here today, Ott Vatter, will present in English, but a couple of pieces of information that are important for what we're going to do today. So, first, Ott is going to present the journey of Estonia to be the first real digital nation in the world, and particularly thinking on how, on where also, or making a parallel, where is Chile today, and what it, how does the path looks for Chile where it is now to where we would like to be. Para eso, Germán, si podemos poner la slide de... Entonces, si ustedes se fijaron, solo voy a explicar, pero yo sé que cada uno debe tener muchas preguntas en los temas de identidad digital, transformación digital, ciberseguridad, interoperabilidad, y para poder hacer esto lo más fluido posible, a continuación de la presentación de Ott, vamos a poder, y para poder hacer la ronda, lo vamos a abrir a preguntas, y entonces los invito a que entren a ese link, posteen su pregunta, y también tiene una opción para votar las preguntas que a ustedes les parezcan interesantes. Entonces, y yo voy a agarrar ese listado y voy a ir haciendo las preguntas más votadas una por una en orden. ¿Sí? Ahí está la conexión a Wi-Fi, porque yo sé que algunos teléfonos no agarran la señal. Y hoy he's going to speak around half an hour, 40 minutes. He has a lot to talk about, and I wanna take a moment to reflect on his visit and Estonia's delegation. We are really very lucky to have them here and to have them signing an agreement of cooperation agreement in the issues of cybersecurity, interoperability, and digital identity. Because many of this this visits, it's usual that sometimes it can get to be just a visit, and then life continues. But what's more important, and really important, is that this is a window of opportunity to work with and to learn with and from the different teams from the Estonian government in the matters that Chile needs to make the leap. And he is really, he has taught me in the last 14 hours or 24 hours, many times inviting me to Estonia, and I'm sure he will invite all of you to visit Estonia and as well to contact him in order to work or network with the teams that are relevant to your work here in Santiago. Why is relevant to have Ott today here and the delegation from Estonia? It's because for us in Chile, it's particularly incredible to say, but we have really a big chance to be a digital country, because we have the tools in place. We have a digital identity that we need to scale. We need to make it robust, we're more secure, but we have it. There are countries, really big countries, developed countries that don't have it, and that's the door, the opening door for the digital world. And obviously, we know all of you know that we have a good tradition of stability in our institutions, of modernization of the state in terms of relatively like constant progress, and now we're also making big efforts in getting 5G, adopting 5G, and getting and building the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure we need to have connectivity everywhere in the territory, and also we just had a big phenomenon of social unrest, of social conflict, if we can mention it, and that, I think it's a problem. Also, it's a huge opportunity to just account for how urgent is to make this leap, and in terms of of digital and what it means on making people's life easier, cheaper, and we were lucky also to what the Undersecretary also mentioned. We were lucky to have passed a law that gives the backup for this, in terms of the law is real. The law is approved, passed by Congress, and it says that in a matter of 5 years, every administrative procedure must be digital and not in paper, and the state government shall not ask the citizen for a piece of data or a document that already possess or generates, and that's nothing more than the state being able to interoperate, to being able to go and pick up a database and internally and another database and simply connect them. What in Estonia is done by X-Road. So our opportunity is big, but I think there's also not many time left, because everyone knows the how us public servants are perceived, and we have a responsibility and not many patience out there. So I don't want to extend, just give the stage for to Ott and make you an invitation, Ott, to be to push us in this audience to the uncomfortable parts of or issues of digital transformation. A very like buzzy and cool topic, and but in the end also hard, particularly from the public sector, where there's a lot of inheritance in terms of systems, of culture, of governance, of legal, that make it hard. And we need to focus on the hard part, because we need to make the work, and that's why I invite you to be. You're a very polite guy, but I invite you to push us. With no further ado, thank you, Ott, and welcome to this presentation today. Please.
Thank you. Gracias. Buenos dias. That's as far as my language skills go. So excuse me for having the presentation in English. I'm happy to be here. This trip for me happened with 1 week's notice, and the flight from Estonia takes about 22 hours. So it's a substantial commitment from the Estonian part to actually come here. But already today, in the hours that we've spent here, I think it has been useful for you guys. I hope it has been useful for us to actually understand what's happening in other parts of the world, and how we can help, but also learn from you guys, because I think you have done a good job in terms of actually having a digital identity. Not many governments in the world have it. And compared with Estonia, which is 1.3 million people, so it has been easier for us to have this digital transformation because we're so small. That is one of the reasons that you might think that, you know, Estonia is a wonder child doing all of this stuff. It's just size and necessity, because coming out of the Soviet Union occupation, we didn't have anything. We didn't have money, we didn't have people, brains. We had brains, but we didn't have knowledge. And so we kind of leaped through digital transformation. This was the only way to actually offer services to citizens. So here you can see some shots of Estonia. And I like to begin my presentation usually with this, to actually give you an idea where we're coming from. we're a country that is 50% forest. So we have a lot of forest, a lot of lakes, and it's very cold and dark. So we have 1.3 million people, about 45,000 square kilometers size. We have Euro, we're part of the European Union, NATO, and a few other organizations. ICT sector employs about 6% of the whole of Estonia. So ICT or IT in general is a big part of Estonian economy and growth. And you can see geographically where we are at. So we have a pretty difficult location, very north, and one very aggressive neighbor. A few ratings. I won't go into too much detail about that, but so ratings can be deceiving always. It's good to be number one, but again, the reasons for that mostly have been related to our size and our history. But it's possible. So most of these ratings are possible because of digital transformation, digital identity, and actually implementing this kind of roadmaps. What are our secret weapons? Internet in Estonia is considered a social right. So every household, every person has access to internet. We have Wi-Fi hotspots, of course, but we also have high-speed cable internet in rural parts of the world. And every Estonian has an ID. So the electronic ID, that's kind of the main backbone of the digital society we have. It's like this. It's basically the same what you have. Very similar. And you have a chip here, which is kind of where the magic happens, right? So you have a USB card reader, you plug it in to your computer, and we communicate with this to our government. So this is our key to everyday transactions with the government and private sector. So we pay our taxes with this, we register our child's birth with this, we log to the bank with this, we change our address, so we do everything using this card from our computer. And why? I told you before that it's pretty dark and cold in Estonia, so we don't like to communicate with people very much. So we like to sit, at home behind our computer and just say, like, pay my taxes. I don't want to talk to anyone. So that's the joke part of it, but actually it is more efficient. It saves you time, it saves you money. What you cannot do in Estonia online yet is getting married or divorced or buying or selling property. So for that we still have the kind of Saxon rule of notaries. So you have to go to the notary to register this kind of process. But mostly everything else you can do from the comfort of your home. You don't have to go anywhere. And we want to change notaries as well. We want to lose them. We have a quite good economic environment. So if you have a digital identity, then it takes you a few hours. It takes 3 minutes to start a company. A few hours it takes for the court someone to look over the data and actually confirm the creation of the company. The taxation is quite simple. So at the end of the economic year, you go to tax board website and you log in with your identity, and they tell you what is your tax for the year, and you either agree or don't agree, but usually you agree because they know better. And we want to have full automation this year, so regarding taxes. Startup Chile, awesome initiative. We copied your idea and did Startup Estonia. The startup scene in Estonia is also quite booming, and we have the most startups per capita in European Union. Over 650 startups, 4 unicorns, number 1 in startup friendliness, billion euros in funding, and we have something called the startup visa program, which means that as a startup you can apply to come to Estonia basically migrate your company there, or as an employee, you can have a startup visa to go and work for a startup in Estonia. So we adhere to the fact that we have 1.3 million people and we need others in our country to actually be successful. Health. Health is very important. Currently we have a young society, so most of our public administration is also very young people, but that won't last forever. So we have a digital identity-based health system, which means that you have your prescriptions, you have your health data, everything online. So when you go to the doctor will prescribe you a drug, and you go to the pharmacy, you give the pharmacist your card, they plug it into the computer, and they see what drugs, pharmaceuticals they have to give you, so they issue the drugs for you. And the same regarding your health records. If, for example, I should break my leg in Estonia, so I call the ambulance, say I broke my leg, and they ask, what is your personal identification code? So every person, when they're born, they're given a code. So my name basically to the government is 39006152712. So that is my name. And I tell the ambulance my personal code, and they immediately have all of the information regarding if I have some kind of allergies to some kinds of pharmaceuticals, or what is the treatment that I have had before. So they take me to the hospital, and if there's some kind of serious, I need an operation or something, so the hospital has the information, what is my blood type and all of that. So that information is already known to the hospital. But it is very important that the people or the doctors actually have the right to look at your data, because not everyone should look at your data. So it's a very serious offense if someone looks at your data without having the justification for it. The same goes for doctors, the same goes for police, the same goes for any other employee that can look at your data. Personalized medicine is something that we haven't done yet, but it's in the roadmap to actually look at the gene pools of people. So we have analyzed about 300,000, or collected the blood samples of 300,000 people and look at what are the genetic codes and what kind of diseases could you be more inclined to have. And this is something that we are going to look more to the future to actually predict what kind of health risks you might have, what kind of sports or what kind of lifestyle you should have to avoid these kind of risks. But this is something we haven't done yet. Education. There was a recent OECD PISA test. So we were #1 in Europe and 3rd in the world. We teach our children ICT skills quite from the early ages. I think that's important. They should be digitally competent, because computers will take out basically every job that doesn't need cognitive skills, and digital by default has to be integrated into the studies as well, because our generations didn't have that digital studying in the schools, but we taught ourselves. But the new generations already are born with iPads and iPhones. If that's a good thing, that's disputable, of course. So this is where everything is based upon. So I showed you my card. This is actually a bit of the newer card. I don't have that yet. Mine is older. But every Estonian has this. This is obligatory. And 99% of the services that we have in Estonia is available online. So e-IDES is European Union legislation to connect all of the identities in EU. And this is the highest level of security document that you can have according to the e-IDES. We also have something called the mobile ID, which means it's a SIM card-based solution where you can actually use to log in via your phone. So you have 2 PIN codes, and you log in with PIN 1 and you authenticate with PIN 2. And we have something called the Smart ID, which is an app-based solution for that. So that's the same logic, 2 PIN numbers, but it is connected via internet connection. So mobile ID is cellular. and card does not need any connection besides cable USB. And how is it all possible? What's the backbone of it? So this is something we like to call a road. If you imagine one highway, big highway, and then smaller roads connected to the highway. This is what we call an X-road. This is the platform that actually connects these different databases, the government databases and the private companies together. So we have about 450 institutions connected to that at the moment, 150 public sector one, and about 3,000 different services. So you can see that you connect to this system using your identity. So whether you are a public servant or you are a user or a private company, you still need this because you need to have your personal code. So you log in with the code and you ask, for example, I want to register a new vehicle. So for that process, through the X-road, you ask information from the population register. Population register said, yes, you are who you claim to be, your address and this and that, and you want to register, for example, a car to your company. Then it also pulls data from the business registry and registers your car in the Department of Motor Vehicles, which is also connected to the system. Cyberspace to defend yourself against everything is also important. So in 2007, we had a little incident in Estonia where we removed a statue in the center of Tallinn, our capital. It was an old Soviet statue. And our neighbor used this opportunity to have the first known cyber attack on a country. And we successfully defeated the cyber attack, but after we understood that this is a new kind of warfare that we have to develop competences. And we put a lot of effort into developing the understanding, and today we host the home for NATO Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Tallinn and the IT Agency of European Union. So together with Israel, I can say Estonia is definitely a country that knows its place in cyber warfare and cyber defense. We have also replicated our data, the government data. So it's a project called Data Embassy. If, God forbid, something should happen physically to Estonia, it's occupied or destroyed, then we have replicated the data of Estonian government in 2 embassies all around the world. So the servers in one room in the embassy contain basically Estonia. So you can run the country from anywhere in the world if you wanted to, which was the situation in 1930s when we had an exile government. It was not digital, but it was run from exile because we were occupied. This system has to be safe in order for the citizens to trust it. So a quite common question is that how do people trust your government? How do people trust this card? How do people trust politicians? And the answer there is really that if you haven't had cases of violation or data leaks, then people trust it. And if people are actually, the services are useful for the people, then you don't have troubles. So we use, to keep the confidentiality, we use the digital identity backbone, which is time-stamped. We use the X-road kind of platform to share the data. And we use keyless signature infrastructure or blockchain, as you can refer to it, to keep the data integrity, so to keep the data safe. So blockchain as a term, I think, has been thoroughly overused in the past 3 years. And everything is on blockchain now. But so when we had the cyber attack, then we started to test with the technology that was basically distributing ledgers. And blockchain as a name did not exist at that time. but we started to test it, and our data is protected with timestamp hash technology. So no data is saved on a blockchain, and Estonia is not a country run on blockchain, which is also a common misconception in the media for some reason. But we just keep our data safe with a similar system that can be referred to as a blockchain. It works similarly, but blockchain is a bit overused. So we got the integrity of our health data, our land data, business registry, successions. We have an e-court system, for example. So our court system works completely from the computers. We have an e-cabinet. So when our government members meet, so they have iPads where they have the agenda for the cabinet meetings. And this saves us a lot of wood, paper and wood. So we're environmentally friendly as well. We try to have zero bureaucracy, but even Estonia has a bit of paper and bureaucracy that you have to deal with. We would like to have our services invisible. So yesterday we were talking about the example of if we know that your passport is going to expire or your identity card is going to expire, why do we make you come to the office of the police to write an application on paper to make a new passport? We know who you are, we know that it's going to expire, why don't we just issue a new passport for you? But laws say that you have to come to the police and we have to see if you are still you. So that still happens in Estonia as well. We haven't gotten rid of that, unfortunately. So it takes time for this kind of innovation to happen. Cross-border digital governance, so we are trying to work with other EU member states as well regarding the e-IDAS Act, so that, for example, with the identity card of Portugal, you could create a company to Estonia, and vice versa. With Estonian ID card, you could actually create a company to Portugal, to Finland, to other countries. It's in the very beginning stages because the digital development of countries is different. And as I told you, the easy side for us has been our size, because it's easier to do with to do innovations with a government that is a bit smaller and electorate that's a bit smaller. So here you can see the latest years what we are developing at the moment is kind of something called the life event service. So that's basically that you know that something is going to happen. Why don't we predict it, or we know that it's going to expire, or your child will have to go to the kindergarten. So your child is born. It's pretty logical that after 5 years he will have to go to the kindergarten, and then 2 years later he will have to go to the school. So why don't we kind of put that already in progress? Why do we ask you to make the applications for the kindergarten, or make the applications for the school, or something like that? But it takes time. And here you have some of the services that we are trying to make life event services. Artificial intelligence, also the new blockchain. Well, I told you before, computers are going to take over almost everything or every aspect that doesn't need actual creative thinking or doesn't need the human touch. The automation is coming. So we created something called the AI strategy for Estonia. So together, I think with Dubai, we have been the only government so far to have artificial intelligence strategy. And Dubai copied it from us. So we want to have some use cases we want to have 50 use cases this year. Last year we actually had a few. So one was, for example, land mowing detection, that EU subsidizes landowners to keep their lands, or to mow the lands, for example, to keep the natural balance of some kind of natural balance of this flora and fauna. And So there were fraud cases that, EU was subsidizing some lands, but the owners were not actually, mowing the lawns and not keeping the flora and fauna as expected. So we developed a system where an artificial intelligence using satellites would actually look at and analyze the maps and analyze, using satellite pictures if it was mowed or not. So you could see, different kind of imagery. But for a person to look at all of the, the size and the satellites, it would take, 10 persons, full-time persons for a year. But if you develop an algorithm for that, looking at the maps, just different kind of little raster graphics, that can be deployed quite easily and save a lot of time and a lot of money. So that was just one of the use cases that we tried. And of course, language detection and support requests. So if people are communicating or complaining about some service of the government, then you can actually, analyze the text and say already which support agents where it should go, because quite often it goes to the wrong place and again, time. So we tried in Estonian public sector, we have the general rule of replying in 40, well, in e-residency is 24 hours, but e-residency is a bit different. It's international, but in public sector in 72 hours, we will guarantee a response. Industry digitalization is also an important aspect to actually have in growing your economy. So most of the industries or old factories are, very outdated. And even in Estonia, we try to move up in the value chain, right? And we try to have robots to actually assemble the line and to automate everything. We have an e-construction platform that we're working on at the moment, so to register new kind of developments and to analyze them if they would actually suit the city picture or not, and to evaluate the architecture and stuff like that. Some lessons learned during the development. So I can't take the credit for all of the e-Estonia, of course, because I'm only working on the e-residency program, which we will get to. But the lessons learned in general, what I have had during this process, is that keep it short and simple. So don't take a mega mammoth project that will last for 5 years, and in the halfway through you will understand that it's already outdated. So keep an agile method, divide it into scopes, and do the small bits first, because today the world is changing in such a fast pace that, for example, the ID card technology, if I would have to do it again today, then I would skip it, because this is 20-year-old technology. It's like plastic. Why do we need it? It's useless. But we have it because it works, right? And for us, it makes sense because every Estonian has it, and we have a procurement that says that 5 years we have to issue the card and all of that. Transparency works. So we had quite a big crisis with the identity card 2 years ago, where one of the manufacturing software element had a security flaw, which was discovered by a few scientists. And that could mean that the supercomputer could actually crack the certificates and basically hack into other person's identity and sign something on the behalf of the other person. And for us, it was a huge problem because we had given this card to quite influential people in the world, like Barack Obama and Angela Merkel and Shinzo Abe and the Pope and Bill Gates. So you can imagine our fear when we understood that somebody could hack into, I don't know, the Pope's or Bill Gates' digital identity and maybe sign a nuclear deal with Russia just to prove that, it can be done. So it was a very tough time for us. And we are very transparent about it. So our Prime Minister and the head of the information systems came out, made a press conference saying, we have this security flaw. It is so we had about 1 million cards. The flaw was in about 300,000 cards. So we said, we will close the 300,000 cards today until we have a solution, to fix the security flaw. And of course, everyone were like, what the fuck? and we got the solution in 2 weeks. and we had a security update. So you had to basically online update your certificates on the card. And we lost about maybe 15% who didn't update it. So their cards are invalid. They cannot use the card anymore. But why transparency works is that the end result, the feedback that we got from the users was very positive. That any government usually, if they have this kind of crisis, they will hide it, right? Because they are, it's a sign of weakness. And let's not tell our citizens, because it will, create fear, and it will become, it will look bad and everything. So we kind of had a different strategy. We said, this is the situation, it's bad, but we are working on solving it. And it worked in the sense that after the people were very thankful that the government was very transparent about it, and we lost a few customers, but it's fine. So we positioned this as a normal security update, like you do with your phone. So every 2 months, every 3 months, your phone operator or your hardware operator will ask you to update your software in your computer or in your phone as well. So that's normal. And why they do it is because they have discovered a lot of flaws that they have to update. So the same with government. The government doesn't want to admit it. Governments are flawed as well. Everything is flawed if you have digital in it. So be transparent. Shared platforms make you quicker. Sharing information makes you quicker. So to have a connection between different databases using, for example, we have the X-Road, but that doesn't mean that that's the perfect kind of system to share the information on different platforms. But you should have a connection, because again, you shouldn't give the data to your government 5 times. So if the population registry already knows your address, then you shouldn't give it to the tax office, or you shouldn't give it to the police, or all of these institutions. And we want to have it so that the private sector can also ask this data from the public. So you want to use the services of a bank, you say, yes, I want to use the services, I give my data to the bank. So the bank will ask through X-Road from the population registry your data, and from the business registry, and from police as well, because maybe you're a criminal, maybe the bank doesn't want you, or we don't want you. What we have learned is that technology or money is not the solution. You have to have a legally permissive environment before. So you can have tons of money like UK had with their healthcare system that they developed, just throwing money at a problem and thinking it will go away. But you have to have a legally permissive environment as well. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And you need to have digital leadership. You need to have visionary people who actually push the government. So before I was asked to push you, be bold. Don't be afraid. You have to take risk in the digital world. Otherwise, there is no reward. But of course, the risk has to be calculated, because in a digital space, there is always a lot of threats, more threats. So in the video, you also saw the self-driving robot. This is one cool company from Estonia called Starship Technologies. And this is a last mile delivery robot. So there is a van that has maybe 50 or 25 of these inside, and they will drive to your street. And then from the van, there will be 25 of these robots coming out and driving to your home, and bringing you your package, bringing you your food, bringing you groceries, whatever you want. And this is an interesting example, because when we talk about the legally permissive environment, we had no law for robots. There was a company who developed this, and then when I was driving my car, and then the robot would come, and stop, and then I would stop, and I was like, so should I give road to the robot now, or what? Or robot should give road to me, or what? How does this work? And nobody knew, because we didn't have anything in the law written, or what would happen if a robot would injure someone, or if I would injure the robot, or what's. So you can see here the conflict. Who has the right? So you need to think of the legal aspects before. Or together with the innovation. So this is just a nice example of how we were pushed by the private companies to actually think of this kind of regulation. And also the self-driving vehicles. I mean, we can read it in every day that the Teslas and all of that actually are the future. But legally, we don't have anything in place for that at the moment. When autopilot Tesla, kills someone, whose fault is it? Who will be responsible? We don't know. My favorite topic. So this is what I actually do. So e-residency is kind of an extension of the identity card. So it's the identity card for you, for non-Estonians. So anyone in the world can apply for e-residency. And we were the first in the world to create a program like this, but in its essence, it's not anything new that you could create a company in a foreign country without digital identity before. I could travel here to Chile, I could go to the notary, I can imagine, and say, I want a company in Chile. Yeah. But the difference is that now I can do it from my computer, from my home. I don't have to travel anywhere, which is huge, saving me 22 hours. Can we play this video as well so you can understand who e-residency is actually for? I think the guy upstairs has to play something. Guy upstairs. Yep. Gracias.
I live in Istanbul. I'm a professional tour guide and I have a career in cultural heritage. I have a company called Walks in Europe, which is established in Estonia through their scheme called e-residency. We have a saying in Turkish, I bet the correct horse. Until 2015, we had a bloom in tourism in Istanbul. We thought we hit the jackpot. One day, in 2015, everything just stopped working. And it happened very dramatically. Our clients stopped coming to Turkey. Even if I was able to reach my clients, the ones that I was able to reach, they weren't able to pay me because PayPal stopped operating. So I had to find somewhere else to run this business. I did a lot of search. I checked a lot of countries. I applied for startup accelerators. But the problem is not an industry that these developed European countries wanted to invest into. So through my research, one day, I still remember it, I saw the Estonian e-residency website. It's like this website asking all the correct questions to me. It answered all of my business needs. E-residency is a program that's supported by the Estonian government. It lets entrepreneurs run a company and accept international payments. So the e-residency program has worked very well for my business model. So when I first applied, their reply was very, very quick, very efficient and very easy to understand. It's a very strange relief from my side because it happened so quickly and I didn't have to go to Tallinn. The only reason I had to go was to open the bank account, which now we don't have to. I'm almost selling more than one tour every day. This is how the company flourished. Last year, I had bookings from my former clients from all around the world. Whoever traveled to Europe, they booked through my new company, which is wonderful. It gave me lots of confidence. Anyone who is thinking about establishing a company through e-residency, the only thing I'm going to tell them is just do it. It's worth it, it's easy, and it is working.
So here you can see the advertisement for our website as well, e-resident.gov.e. You can check it out later or now if you want. So the application is completely online. My first job when I joined the government for 2 months was to actually take this online. So before you had to come to Estonia, you had to go to the police, you had to fill in a paper physically and then apply for e-residency. Now everything is, you can do it, it's responsive from your phone. All you need is your personal data, your passport photo and your profile photo, because it's a national document. The application goes to the Estonian police, they will do a background check, and then you have to meet one of our representatives in the Estonian embassy. Sad fact is we don't have an embassy in Chile yet. But yeah, so Arzu is one of our e-residents from Turkey who runs a travel business. And for her, because her business is all around EU, Estonia is an easy place to base her company because she can move around easily and she doesn't have to go to places physically. So it's kind of a relief for her, as she said. We also have quite many residents from Asia who want to enter the EU market. So they see this as a business opportunity. We were quite big in Korea. Japanese Prime Minister became a resident. So here you can see some of the private companies that have integrated e-residency to their systems. So how this works is that they integrate the digital identity login. For example, Nasdaq, which is a stock exchange, right? You have probably heard about it. You can log into Nasdaq Baltics using your identity card. So for example, if you have stock, like Apple stock, and you don't want to go to New York for the shareholder meeting, or you don't want to pay your very expensive attorney to attend the shareholder meeting. So you can attend the shareholder meeting with your digital identity. So you can vote with this. By the way, we vote for our parliamentary elections also with this card from our computer. And we hope the picture after 1 year when I come back here to be like this, so that more and more private sector companies will actually develop services on top of e-residency. So this is some of the media coverage that we have had regarding e-residency. We've been around the world. But why we are doing this, what's the kind of reason behind it, is that we believe that the workforce or the way how people work is changing. So people are moving around more, they are working for different kind of companies. It's not one traditional company that they keep working for, it's many. And freelancing is growing. We believe that there has to be one, or there could be one government or one country that will actually compete for these freelancers, digital nomads, whoever we call them. And because there's so many of them, and countries today are not catering for them. They are moving around and they're kind of homeless because they're in no place. They don't have one place to place their company, because usually you have to go to the tax office physically, you have to go to the bank physically, and you have to do everything on paper. You have to go there. But if your life is online in your computer, you're traveling constantly, where is your home? The answer is Estonia. So we believe that the different kind of value propositions don't have to be in one place. So for example, you have a very nice climate. We have a very nice business environment. Maybe Japan has very good engineers. And maybe from Silicon Valley you can get funding. So how to connect these different kind of dots, right? Without physically traveling all those places, maybe all the time, right? So we see a lot of engineers who want to spend their winters in warm places, not Estonia, because Estonia is cold and dark, as I told you. But there's something that can connect these kinds of dots. And we believe that to be the digital identity of Estonia. Or at least it could be one option. I mean, we're not saying that it's the only one. So you have probably seen this somewhere in the social media, that the world is changing. I mean, all the biggest companies don't own any assets themselves. You are the asset, we are the asset, the user is the asset, or my real estate is the asset on Airbnb, my data is the asset on Facebook, my car is the asset on Uber. But they are the companies that dominate us. So the world is heading in an interesting place. And we have made one addition here, is that with e-residency, Estonia can be the largest country in the world by having only 1.3 million actual residents, but having tens and tens of millions of e-residents. And that is all. Thank you. Time for questions.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ott. That's really amazing. You can have a seat if you're tired. Or so we have like 25 minutes for questions, and then we have some coffee and food outside. So so far there are many questions, and I'm going to start with one, and then I'm going to make my best effort to
answer them.
No, never answer them. You're in charge of answering them, but combine them, the ones that are similar, and get the conversation going. If anyone wants to interrupt or make a comment, also can raise hands, and we keep going. So my question would be, so here in Chile, we are in a moment in which we need to break the silos and transit towards shared platforms. What was, if any, the most important difficulty on doing that?
I think we discussed that a bit yesterday as well with you guys. The difficulty is that all of the public institutions have their own plans and agendas. So for you, as you are trying to kind of connect them, or your agenda is to share the information or put in place a system where to share the information, you have to motivate all of the different ministries to come along with your plan. So that means resources, money, time, and motivation. So our biggest struggle was to motivate, let's say, the ministries or public institutions to actually come aboard, because their roadmap or their, let's say, activities were something else, to motivate them, to give them an understanding that it's useful. So at first it was very difficult because they didn't see the value. Why should I start to do some IT development of sharing my information with another ministry? Like, I don't like that ministry, or I don't like that minister. So it's, the first barrier of understanding the value of sharing information or sharing anything. The same for e-residency, to motivate Estonian police to look beyond Estonia. Because the police, the idea of the police is to protect its citizens, not to give digital identity to foreigners. But we had to convince the Estonian police that no, look at the bigger picture, we are only 1.3 million people, in 50 years we will die. We need more people, we need more economy. So, to, motivate and to make them understand.
And a follow-up question, do the silos manage to try to stay alive, or how do you say, like come to birth again, or make the fight?
It's a struggle. It's always a struggle, but once you have the system in place and they can see the value themselves. So for example, population registry does not have to have Excel tables anymore, or they see that they can actually cut down costs, or they can actually save time themselves. So it becomes valuable for them then it will be broken. But the first steps to actually show them, these are the most difficult ones.
That's a great insight. So make the value really explicit.
Make them understand.
So there are many questions. I'm going to jump into the quickly into some of them. So first one is, what challenges have you faced around adoption by citizens?
So
and the digital gap, so the difference between the backgrounds of different citizens related to education and
the adoption of the identity card at first was so we made it obligatory as you that everyone must have it. It cost quite a lot at that time, so we made our citizen pay for something which no citizens like, right? And you didn't have use for the card in the beginning. So first 2 years you could do nothing with the ID card. I mean, you could, if the police stopped you, you could show it and it would be your identification physically, but digitally you couldn't do anything. And the people were furious. Like, what is it, you make me pay for this shit and it doesn't work, and what is wrong with you, right? And then the adoption, we started to make trainings for the people in department stores, for example, to teach them how to use it. And then the first ones to create services were private sector. It was the banks and telecoms first who started to make value for the identity card. So you can log into the bank, you can do transactions, you don't have to use, passwords, which is very unsafe, PIN calculator, all of that. And then people, again, they started to see the value themselves that, oh, I don't have to go to the tax office and wait 3 hours. I can do this from here with 3 clicks. And then the adoption started to take place. Of course, today still, 99% of the services are available online, but that doesn't mean that people who are in their 80s or 90s, they use this for everything. And some people have a principle of liking to vote physically. So we have i-voting, so you can vote from your computer. But some people like to go to the ballot place and fill in the paper and all of that, right? So it's a choice. So we cannot force the people to be digital. There always has to be alternative for analog as well. But today, of course, the majority is doing stuff digital. So the challenge first was, again, adoption and understanding the value for it, because at first there was no clear value. And it doesn't happen overnight, so don't expect that you have a digital identity and now tomorrow you will have 2,000 services and everyone will start to use it. It's a challenge.
And on that side, how do you manage to keep citizens engaged, or in terms of communication efforts, or also how do you manage to build skills on those areas of the population that lay behind, in order to participate of these benefits of being a digital citizen?
Not all will participate, but again, if they see value in it, so some of the transactions, for example, are cheaper when you do it online compared to when you go and have the physical, so state fee, for example, for updating your driver's license or registering your car. When you go to the office and do it, it's €5 more expensive than when you do it from online. Because the office, you have to pay the salary of the person who is there, and then you have to rent the place, and there are costs involved. So the incentive is money.
Perfect. I'm gonna turn into cybersecurity. There's a bunch of questions on the topic. Some of them in Spanish. I'm gonna do my best effort to translate. So the first one, with the experience you had in 2007 of denying of services or of service in your country, how do you recover from that and like avoid that happening again, and being able to implement the digital transformation up to now? And the second one, maybe I'm going to do the two in a row, about legislation. So what incentives in Estonian are there in Estonian legislation for being able to report cybersecurity incidents or gaps in data protection?
So I'll start with the first one. 2007 was a very difficult time for us because we never anticipated. Nobody actually knew what a cyber attack was. That was the first registered country-to-country, so to say, warfare in the internet. And they took down our systems, but there was no serious consequences for us. And we learned very quickly that, oh shit, we have to do something for this to never happen again. But I think the people understood very well that cyber is a threat, and we had quite big budget allocations from the government to develop this kind of systems. And now we have quite many private companies also that deal with this kind of threats in Estonia. The second question.
Around legislation.
Okay, yeah, what to report? Yes. We don't have actually like incentives regarding legislation to report cyber incidents. We just have cyber defense units in some of the public administration that deal with this, and there will always be cyber incidents that we don't know about, and only the biggest ones actually, you know, come up. But we don't have any incentives in that way, legal incentives. No.
I'm going to go with another one on cyber. It says, in your opinion, what areas of Estonia are the most attractive for cyber threats, and what kind of measures does the country adopt?
Mm-hmm. Well, most attractive for cyber criminals is state systems, state information systems, for example. st.ee site we checked with yesterday with some of you. So it's basically the go-to portal for all of digital services in one place for the citizens, and that is being attacked probably 2-3 times a day.
Okay, we have a question on blockchain here. Can you deepen on a concrete application of blockchain in the government of Estonia?
So utility, I mean, what do we use blockchain for is the question. We use blockchain to keep our data safe. So health data, land data, personal land registries, real estate, what you have. We use blockchain technology to keep the data immutable. So no one, even the administrator of the database, so to say, cannot change the data. It's impossible. If you alter it in some way, you immediately see it because you have the history of the immutability with timestamp technology.
Great. Here's a question on more of the digital or technological environment of the country. What part of the telecommunications sector, or what role did the telecom sector play in the design and development of the Estonian digital strategy?
Telecommunication sector was represented through a cluster we have called the information technology cluster. But it was not only telecoms there were IT companies, development agencies, there was also some banks involved there. So how it works in Estonia is that we develop our state systems with private companies usually. So we don't have that much in-house development because we believe that governments are quite slow and private companies are always better in IT developments. And so we kind of have this procurement model, or we outsource the services. So they did play a role, and they were also with the banks. They were one of the first ones to create services for digital identity or create a use case. So you wouldn't have to go to the telecom office or department store to get your contract. You could sign the contract online and they would send the SIM card or something with post, which is much more efficient.
And so on that topic, that's really interesting. Like what happens if if tomorrow, like the Estonian government decides that needs to or requires a service, a new capacity in technology, what would you do? You convene with the private sector and you set the standards of what just make a public bid. And
so I'll bring a concrete example of what we're working on at the moment. So 2 days ago, our government passed a bill saying that we will create a new type of visa called the digital nomad visa. So the problem with digital nomad visa, what we're solving is that there are so many people who actually are illegally working from everywhere with a tourist visa, right? So I'm a designer, but I'm in Chile with tourist visa and I'm here working, right? So there is a problem. And how that development came into place was that with one private company who offers relocation services. It's a company called Jobatical. So they saw that there were a lot of people coming to Estonia with tourist visas, but they were working here. So this is a kind of a problem. They said, how can we solve it? And they went to the Interior Ministry, proposed that, why don't we make this kind of thing? And the Interior Ministry was like, okay, well, let's see. And then we started to analyze it. They involved us from e-residency because it goes together with digital identity quite well and could be next step if people wanted more. They want to come to Estonia for, half a year, for example. And we like it very much because they bring also their money to Estonia, right? So they buy services, they stay there, they spend the money, which is economic growth for Estonia, right? So it's a win-win. And together with that private company, Interior Ministry, us, we devised the kind of plan for this and sent it to the government, and now the ministry is doing it.
Also, it happens that in smaller countries, usually there's more of a tendency or a risk of like the state being captured by companies or technological providers. How is it managed in Estonia?
I mean, it's always tricky in a small country where everybody knows each other, right? There is a possibility for conflict of interest. There is possibility for corruption. But for Estonia, it has always been the digital kind of way of doing things is very transparent. So you have a digital identity, you have a procurement process, all of the bids are open. So everything that is digital is much more or less inclined towards any negative aspects, right? The same for crime, for example. If we have your fingerprints, we have your personal data, then it's not a very smart place to do crime, to come to Estonia, for example. Because if you wanted to be a good criminal, you would do it, on paper so that nobody could trace it.
Oh, there's a funny one here. Can you share your photo library used in your presentation?
I can share the presentation.
Great.
Because it's so this is also Estonia actually. When you go to estonia.com and click Toolbox, you can download the presentation from there, and you can download a lot of photos. There's a photo bank of all the photos actually, so a lot of cool stuff there. Check it out.
We're on time, but no, 5 more minutes. 10:30. Okay. I think 2 or 3 more questions.
Sure.
So there are a bunch of public agency leaders here and IT leaders, CIOs, and there's a question here that says, here in Chilean public sector, we have big difference among services with regard to digital development and IT capabilities. Did your country go through this problem? How did you manage to address it?
Capabilities, you mean like talent or
I would
knowledge?
say financial,
Okay.
talent,
Resources,
equipment, skills. Yeah.
Yes. So we came out of nothing when we declared our independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. We had absolutely nothing. We had 50% forest, but that's about it. So we really had to, first of all, build a government out of nothing with no knowledge. I think our prime minister had read one book by Milton Friedman, and he said like, okay, we will do capitalist. We will go like this. But they did some smart decisions at that time. For example, put like internet cables into public schools in 1994, which was very early days, and that kind of sprawled this generation of people who are more computer oriented and created. I don't know if you know, it was Napster, and then it was Kazaa, like so these are all created by Estonians actually. The money came from Sweden, but it was actually Estonian developers. And the same guys created Skype after that. Skype is also Estonian. And so we did have a problem with no resources in the beginning of the 1990s, but we made some right decisions that kind of rewarded us now. And also with the digital identity 20 years ago, or 15, 20 years ago, as I told you, when we started with it, the people hated it. They said, what is this? Why I have to do it? It's useless. And also they hated the government for doing this. But now, 20 years later, people are super thankful that we actually did it, because we can't imagine our life without it. So to answer your question, we had very similar problems, but you just, I think, you have to take risk, you have to be bold, and you have to be quite efficient.
Great. I have two last questions. So the first one, it says, how did you address the process of customer support of so many platforms? In government, was everything done from the private sector? And yeah, so basically support. Technology needs support and needs to be updated and needs to be quickly adopting the new technology. How do you manage that?
That is one of the biggest problems that we face in our IT at the moment, is that our IT systems have been developed 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and they have been developed through the support of European Union grants. And now these grants, are over because we're not a third world country anymore, so we're doing good. Nobody wants to give us money anymore. And now it's a challenge so we have built up these very expensive IT systems, but we don't have money to maintain them. So what is going to happen next? So that is a very, very big question that we are facing at the moment.
And usually you have a combination of internal support and maintenance, and external, or
so
it's
we
also externalized?
Yes, we have had internal and external, but the short-sightedness has been that you have the money for the development, but nobody thought that you would actually have to maintain it for a long period. Because at that time, nobody thought of this. It was like 15 years ago. It was like, oh, let's make it, and it's ready.
Yeah,
but
you make it and then you forget.
Yeah, basically, right? So I think it resonates to a lot of CIOs and IT managers that at that time people did not think about that very much. And for us, this is a huge problem now, because we are considered the most advanced digital nation in the world, but still it's a problem that some of our core systems are actually kind of in dire need of very big investments.
Now, regarding people and society, probably we as Chileans are not there yet in terms in the trade-off of data privacy and convenience, but we have a digital identifier that we Chileans are used to give it very often to shops, stores, banks, whatever. And so my question would be, how has been evolving the approach of Estonians to the trade-off between privacy of your data and convenience of services?
Do you mean your Clava Unica, or you're referring to
our identifier, our number?
Okay.
So we give it for everything, and obviously that's used, information that is used.
So we have, our kind of loyalty cards work the same way that we have the identity card, right? So you go to a shop and you give this, and they register like a loyalty card on top of the certificates here, right? But Estonians are kind of like used to it. So when I go and speak in Germany or UK, then the first question is like, your government is giving you a code. Like how is that possible? You know, because they really distrust their government, and they distrust their government with their data, because they have had some serious data leaks and problems. In Estonia, we don't really feel it. We haven't had any data leak. People are very comfortable of giving their data to the government because the level of service that they get is very high. So they don't really, I mean, think about it. It's a trade-off. Plus, we take data security very seriously, as I said. That if you do not have the right to look at my data as a police officer, I can at any time ask the government who has looked at my data and why. So if you do not provide an answer why you have looked at my data, this is a criminal offense and your license might be taken away from you.
Okay, that helps a lot on the the explanation on how this comes to play and where we have to go in terms of transparency. You talk about transparency.
I mean, we have had these cases as well in like 15 years ago, when, you know, some police officers are spying on their ex-girlfriends, you know, in the police databases, or some medical people are looking at medical data of, you know, prime ministers or something, which they shouldn't do, right? And again, with digital identity, every action that you do leaves a trace, so it's traceable. So you see, right? If you do it on paper, then nobody knows. Please.
I believe that's a difference between how the architecture of the data that you have with 240-something nodes between Chilean structure. Because we give our name, our code name, it's our root, and with that they can compare all the stories behind that, that number. But Estonia doesn't have that, because you have all your, in the KSI infrastructure, if I give the number, you can access all the other data. That's it's a way, it's a different mindset.
Yeah.
You have to change the mindset in order to trust who's behind the number.
Difficult to change the mindset, but I would recommend starting to do it.
Well, I have a last question. So in the audience, there are many IT professionals, IT managers, agency leaders. What advice would you give them, given that you have traveled all around the world, listening to and hearing governments around their digital government efforts, and given what you've seen in Chile?
Difficult question. I mean, the problems are quite similar everywhere, that people do not trust the governments very much. Lack of resources, lack of money, lack of time, lack of political support. Maybe my recommendation would be that try to be as close as possible to, you know, the people who decide things, and explain the value to them, because otherwise things won't happen. You need, like, key aspects. You need political support. Otherwise, you know, you can't do innovation. You need resources, money, and you need brains, right? And you have to be close to the power, so to say, if you want to execute these things, because I mean, politicians are politicians, but you have to convince them that it's necessary for them.
Well, thank you very much, and please join me on
Thank you.
thanking. I'm sure this is really a lot of value for us, and more importantly, an opportunity to open a window of work, joint window with Estonia. So we'll be waiting for your your presentation, and maybe your contact to get in touch.
Yeah, please, if you want to come to Estonia, more than welcome. But if you think our experience can help you in some way, so we do provide this kind of shared information, so you can get in touch with me, you can get in touch with relevant ministries, you know, your counterpart. If you want to get more information, we can help to connect you somehow. And if you think our information and knowledge is useful, then you get my contacts.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Ott, y muchas gracias a todos. Los invitamos a pasar acá al café para seguir conversando. Gracias.